So Andrew went over how to deploy things from your browser, and we're going to be looking at a little more at answering getting more in depth into some of the questions that Andrew was actually answering. But also we're going to be using, in my presentation, the Wolfram desktop. So this is the native application that lets you deploy, manage your cloud objects exactly the same way, the same set of files, but in a native application. So in this case, I'm using my laptop. So what are cloud objects? They're really just files stored in our cloud, but there's a few wrinkles that would be good to cover. You can access them either from your desktop environment or the browser. How do you create them? So here I've done a cloud put. If you're familiar with Wolfram language, you're familiar with put. And this is the same concept, except the file goes in the cloud. And I've got an object here. It's got a cloud object head, and it's got a link inside. I can click that link. It'll take me into the cloud. And after I sign in, it'll actually take me there. So that's me viewing my cloud object that I created in the desktop, but viewing it through my browser. So let's break down what just happened when I did that cloud put. It created a new cloud object. I didn't have to specify a file name, if you noticed. It made one up. It assigned a universally unique identifier to that object, and it also gave it a MIME type. MIME type is a type that indicates how the cloud object should behave. In this case, it was an expression because put always creates expressions. And this cloud object also has options that modify its behavior. So it has permissions and icons and meta information, key value pairs. There's a bunch of things that just happened when we created this cloud object. There are some other ways to create cloud objects. I can go from code and create an animated GIF. This is a GIF I created using the GIF exporter from Wolfram language. I can deploy a web page, a static web page. I can create, and notice these have different MIME types. So the GIF obviously is a GIF file. The HTML page has a type HTML. I can copy a file from my laptop into the cloud using copy file. I give it a local file path. Let's check what that is. So it's a file here, and I copied it, and I specified cloud object of, and I gave it a name. And I'm going to click the link and find an old Rembrandt in the cloud somehow. So there's a variety of ways to actually get files, get cloud objects there. I can also retrieve them. I can reverse the arguments to copy file and say, well, I'm copying from the cloud to my local desktop. So this is a very powerful mechanism. You can move files in and out scriptably like this. It's a very simple model to understand. And I want to say just a word. Andrew answered this. Somebody asked a question, can you rename it? So here are the things to remember. All the cloud objects have a UUID. Some cloud objects have a name. I gave a name to a cloud object. The ones that do have a name, I can rename. And the ones that don't are unnamed. And I wanted to show you in the browser where you can find those. In the file sidebar, there's going to be an all files and an unnamed cloud objects. This lets me browse the ones that have never been given a name. And I can find, using these icons, I can find ones that I created just now. But we can also list them here. The cloud objects function allows you to enumerate these. So if I say none, that tells me cloud objects that don't have a name. I can ask to do a directory listing, so cloud objects in the current cloud directory. I can also ask for cloud objects of a certain type. So cloud objects of type goes to API function. This is giving me all my APIs, whether they're public or not. I can ask for forms, I can ask for instant web computations, I can ask for plain old expressions, notebooks, a variety of others. So if you dig into this, you'll find ways to track these down. I can also manage these. Picking a random cloud object, I can ask all kinds of questions about it. Does it exist? Is it a directory? What type is it? How big is it? The super utility function is cloud object information that gives you the lowdown on everything, including permissions and the MIME type that I mentioned, creation dates, last modified dates, and all those things. So you've got a pretty comfortable, these are all familiar operations that you can do on files. You're moving them in and out of the cloud, so you can access all these things this way. And now I wanted to show you, using the desktop environment, how to do some deployments. So I've got a particular problem that I've chosen for this demonstration. We're going to talk about photographic flash for a second. I would like to be able to use my photographic flash to properly expose a subject, and I want to know what power setting do I use. Do I use it full power? Do I use it at the minimal power? And it turns out there's a calculation for this. Given a number that the manufacturer tells you, the guide number, and given the lowest power setting, that's sort of a form 1 over 2 to the n, so it could be 1 over 32 or 1 over 128, we can compute the distance that the flash and the subject need to be apart from each other to have the photograph correctly exposed. And there are solutions out there. Nobody's not figured this out. You can do trial and error. You can take a picture and see, is it underexposed, overexposed, tweak the settings. That's kind of inelegant. You can buy a light meter and do this. You can buy an expensive flash that has an automated system for it. We would like to do this through a computation. We just like to know the numbers, set the power in one step, and not pay anything. So I have encoded this calculation in Wolfram language with this power function. We've got a list of common f-stops for the camera, and I've got a function that will give you a very handy table that somebody could print out and take into their photo lab and just set the power settings on their flash. So I've got these functions, and I test them a little bit. I create a manipulate that lets me interact with it and pretty quickly get an idea. Does it seem to be sensible? I've got an example of one of these tables. It looks good to me, and I want to get it out there. And I've got a couple of choices. I can do an API endpoint. I think in this case, I'm going to do a form. We want a form that's going to accept these numbers as inputs and give you the table. And I've specified it's going to be a PNG image. So I'm checking this out. I give a couple of common numbers, and there we have it. Anybody can use this form, get the table printed out. I just heard that somebody wants this in PDF. So, okay, let's do that. Instead of, I'm going to run the API version for a second. So at the very end here, the end user can specify a different export form. You can override this, but the end user can say, I would like that in a PDF, please. And there I go. I didn't have to change my code. I could just tell somebody to add that parameter, and now they've got it in a format that's more suitable for them. I am very excited about this, and I'm going to tweet, it works. Try the new lighting form. And let's see, did I call it form? I did. And I have just tweeted my deployment. And now, of course, what you do, anytime you publish something, you sit back and wait for the page hits to come in. And my last step here is going to be cloud logging data, where I can get all kinds of information about who is accessing my form, how often, some graphs. And there's too much to digest here. I see that my time series shows it's going down, so maybe I go on my social media again and pump it up. But this gives you an end-to-end code to tracking my deployment in kind of one step.